Good evening, 4-3. Tonight we're going to focus on Lesson 5, compare numbers based on meanings of the digits using greater than, less than, or equal to record the comparison. Now there's a lot of tricks out there that people use to help with comparing numbers. And we're not going to focus on the tricks. We're going to focus on the meaning of place value, comparing those digits. I know one of those tricks that we like to use and how we help remember what the bigger number is with our alligator. The alligator is always pointing, his mouth is always pointing to the greater number. How I like to use the alligator is saying, I am hungry. So if you are really hungry, you're going to go for the bigger amount of food. You're not going to go for the smaller amount, you're going to go for the bigger amount. So the mouth is going to be pointing to the bigger number. He wants the bigger number than the smaller number. That is the greater sign. And then this part is focusing on the smaller number. All right, here's our first example. 210,005 and 220,005. We want to compare these two numbers by using those classic symbols of greater than, less than, or equal to. These are the classic symbols we use to compare numbers. To help us compare these two numbers, we're going to be using our place value chart. The ones, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, the 10,000s, 100,000s, up to the millions. First, we have to place each number in the appropriate column. So I put the 5, 0, 0, 0, 1, and 2, and then our next number, 5, 0, 0, 0, 2, 2, in the correct column. But now what we're going to do is we are going to compare these two numbers column by column by column. So we look at the first column, we look at the largest column, which is the hundred thousands. And we see that this number has two copies of the 100,000s, and this number has two copies of the 100,000s. So right now, this number is tied. They're equal so far because their 100,000s have the same digit in it. So now we need to go to the 10,000s column and compare those two numbers. As we can see, there is one copy of a 10,000, but then this number has two copies of the 10,000. Automatically, this number is larger. So in our comparison, we can put the greater sign because this number is greater. And remember, the alligator's mouth has to be pointing to the larger number. So here's a crazy thing. We can actually change and erase these numbers and make them all into 9s. And do you know what? This number would still be greater than this number because the 10th, it matters because in this column, this number is bigger than this number. So it doesn't matter what you put over here. You have to focus on the 10,000 column, and that automatically shows you that this number is larger. So this is how we're going to compare numbers, by using and thinking about the place value chart. All right, let's put this into practice now and try these numbers. We want these numbers right here to be put from least to greatest. And we need to put our place value chart, and we need to place each one of these numbers into our place value chart to help us compare the numbers. Using the place value chart, we need to look at each column by column by column. And we always want to start off with the largest column. In this problem, it's the thousands. So we see that there is a 7 copies of 1,000, 5 copies of 1,000. There is nothing here, so it's a 0. Here's a 5 copies, and here's a 7 copies of the thousands. Automatically, this is the number that's the smallest because there is no copies, there are no thousands in this number. So in order to rule him out, I'm going to cross him off my list, and I'm going to write it down. 750 is the least number out of these numbers. And what I also can do is that, you know, if we use our dry erase boards, I can actually erase this digit out of our place value chart, so it gets less complicated of all these different numbers to look at. So to continue, we need to still compare using our place value chart to help us with these numbers. So again, this one has 7 copies. This one has 5 copies. This one has 5 copies, and this one has 7 copies of thousands. So let's compare the fives. So this doesn't help us because we are at a tie. This has 5 copies, and this one has 5 copies. So we need to go to the next column. This one has no hundreds. This one doesn't have any hundreds. So then we have to go to the next column. This one has 7 copies of 10s, and this one has no copies of 10s. So automatically, this number is our second least number out of all these numbers. So I'm going to cross him off, and I'm going to write him down. 5,007 is the second least number. And now I also can erase him from our place value chart to make it less complicated and narrowing it down to the greatest, the winner of all those numbers. So once I took 5,007 out of the place value chart, we noticed that we could, this will be the third, this would be the third least number because it has the smallest thousands. Has a 5. The other ones have 7s. So I'm going to record him. Take him out of the game. 5,070 is the third least number. And just like I did last time, I can erase him from our place value chart to make it less complicated. All right, so now we have 2 numbers left in our place value chart. And if we go to the highest column, which is the thousands, we have a 7 and we have a 7. So each one has 7 copies of thousands. So that doesn't help us. So we need to go to the next column, which is the hundreds. This one has 5 copies and this one has 5 copies. Again, the hundreds column is not going to help us. So now we need to go to the tens. And in the tens column, there's 5 copies of 10s. And in this number, there are no copies of 10s. So automatically, this number becomes the next least number. It is 7, so let's cross him out up here, 7,505. And just by the process of elimination, because we're going to erase this guy out of here, and by the process of elimination, we are left with our greatest number, which is 7,550. Now, as you guys get better at this, you're not going to need a place value chart. But let's start using the place value chart to help us really understand about comparing numbers and not following those certain tricks that we've always been using. All right, guys, it's your time to try out what we have learned this evening. So give it your best effort. All right, now make sure you try to use the place value chart to help you compare these 2 numbers. 43,021 is greater than, less than, or equal to 45,302. Using your place value chart, put these 3 numbers from least to greatest. Now this is something different. You've got word form, and you're taking and understanding what the word form looks like as a standard number and comparing it to a standard number of 908,930. First, what I would do is I would take this number, this word form, and write it out in standard form first, and then compare your 2 numbers. Good luck. Keep up the good work, guys. You're doing great. Have a wonderful night.